Hi guys, this is my session on how to achieve top marks on a 12-mark psychology essay. Now this essay is actually looking at conformity. If you look at the title, consider psychological research into conformity. Now the key word here is being research. Do not delve into your essay without actually talking about research. And they are specifically looking for the most appropriate types of research that look into conformity. Now, as you remember, conformity, there can be two types. There can be one looking at majority influence, and there's one that could be looking at minority influence. It doesn't matter which one you pick. You can actually use two researches if you want to. As you can see that this student actually did use two researches in the actual essay. This introduction bit here, I'll say it can be unnecessary. It depends on how fast you actually write. See, this student actually just gives a brief introduction into what conformity is, and they've used it as an introduction to the main study, which was Ash's study, which obviously Ash was looking at majority influence. If we read on for the first paragraph, you can see exactly what this student does in order to start generating his AO1 marks. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to highlight all our AO1 marks in, let's say, we'll highlight it in yellow. Okay, oops, it's gone a whole yellow there, I don't want it whole yellow. Let's highlight it yellow. Okay, so you can see in his experiment there were 5 confederates, okay, and only one true participant, which was the last seated. All of this is a procedure. You know how I've told you to write as aims, procedures, findings and conclusions, so it'll be quite good as well to identify which ones are our aims and which ones are our findings and procedures. Obviously he hasn't really started with an aim, but it may not be as detrimental as it may seem. So let's take a look. He carried on talking about what happened in the Ash experiment. That's all correct. That's all accurate. The Confederates were told to give the wrong answer on purpose when the task was unambiguous. That's still procedure. If you've noticed that the procedure will take on a majority of the AO1, especially for the main study of Ash. Let's start looking at findings. So actually, let's highlight just the procedures. When the task was unambiguous, Ash, okay, oops, okay. So let's highlight that. I hope it doesn't do anything random again. Okay, let's make it into a better color. Let's highlight the procedures as green. But why is the whole thing yellow? Oh, I don't want the whole thing yellow anymore. Let's make that white. Okay, that's better. So the AO1 procedures are green. Let's look at the findings. Let's put the findings on as, okay, when the task was ambiguous, Ash found that there was high levels of conformity. This meant that even though the participants were the correct answer, they deliberately gave the wrong. When participants later interviews, they claimed that in order to avoid being laughed at by the other people, they went along with the wrong answer. In other words, compliance took part. The participants agreed to the wrong answer to avoid rejection. Also labelled this as normative conformity, as a participant induced by accepted by the other, even though privately they agreed with their answer. Okay, let's label that as findings and conclusions, and let's put that as, no, what did I do there? Okay, let's highlight it as blue. Findings and conclusion. When Ash gave an ambiguous task, which means an unclear task, he still found high levels of conformity took place. That's still findings actually. All of this are findings. Okay, so all of this will be under findings and conclusions. Can you see a nice chunk of AO1 sections there? Now, what this person has done, and you really need to do this if you want to score highly on a 12-mark question, this student didn't just talk about one key study, which was ASH. He spoke about another key study. Now, he didn't go into as much detail on his second key study as he did on his first one. So let's look at what he done. With Moscovici, that's another key study looking at internalization. He basically carried this on and told us that it actually also demonstrated conformity. And he said, however, he showed how the minority can influence the majority. And he carried us, giving us a procedure. So what colour is our procedure? Let's look at it as green. So he looked at our procedure. So Moscovici, they were also present in the room. This is all procedures, as you can read. That's not procedure. In one green, found that. Okay, so this little bit. So can you see? Oh, that's not procedure. Silly me. Can you see how? And in one green, okay, and these ones will be findings here and conclusions, as Moscovici concluded. But can you see how the Moscovici one is actually less, so much less. So this is a Moscovici one than the Ash's original one. So there's more detail in the Ash, which is fine. By using the second study, you're demonstrating your knowledge and your understanding of more psychological research. Okay, so all our AO1's done. That should be enough to get us full marks on our AO1. We've looked at one key study and we've looked at another study. Now, the other study can either be supporting or it can be undermining study. That is a study that goes against. It doesn't actually matter. Now, what I want to focus on now is this 2 paragraphs as our evaluation, again, which is extremely important in our 12-mark questions, as our evaluation gets us the other half of our marks. It doesn't matter how nice your AO1 is, you're never going to get full 12 out of 12 with just your AO1. And I want to show you the techniques that this person skillfully uses to evaluate both studies. So let's take a look at it. However, as Ash and Moscovici's experiments were both lab experiments, this means that the artificial environment reduced the ecological validity levels. So I want to highlight, which color can we use? I want to highlight ecological validity levels. This is our points that they're making. Very, very important, as it was not based upon real life, thus did not record natural behavior. This is them elaborating on their point. This is further elaboration which you'll need to do. They were both also criticised for being unethical, as their participants were deceived of the true aim of the experiment. This also meant that the informed consent was not taken for the experiment. Nonetheless, in this case, deception was necessary in order to reduce levels of demand characteristics and social desirability that would result in a reduction of validity levels. Yeah, so all this paragraph here would have been enough for a nice, good 3 marks. And then you have to do it again. Finally, both experiments are ethnocentric. That is a point. Oh, by the way, being unethical as well was another point, and they elaborated why they were unethical. So altogether, they have 3 main evaluation points, but they've really elaborated what they actually mean. So this was ethnocentric. For those that don't know what ethnocentric means, is basically they don't take into consideration generally different cultural variations or cultural differences. Yeah, so they've explained it. Collectivist cultures, such as those in Japan, China, and other Eastern countries, would have higher levels of conformity, as a community tend to work together to help one another out. Whereas individualist countries, such as the United Kingdom, which we are, would have lower levels of conformity compared to those found in Eastern countries. This is because in individualistic countries, people look out only for themselves and would therefore have more independent behavior, reducing levels of conformity. And that would be a nice evaluation point for the ethnocentric point. So all of this will just be 1 point further elaborated, and that is what you need to do to get a full 12 out of 12 for your psychology essays.